1IV been giving Lance advice for years as his wife, and then out of nowhere, his first love came back to town. To get her back, he sent someone to hit me with a car. Rachel, you only have yourself to blame for insisting on being my wife. Lance stood by my side, looking down at my pathetic state. Today was our wedding anniversary. Never in my wildest dreams did I think the man, who usually treated me with such care, was behind this accident. Don't worry, after you die, I'll get the Smith family's shares. After all, I'm Bob's wonderful son-in-law. He leaned down, staring at me with those deep brown eyes that used to be full of love, but were now just mocking. I stared back in disbelief, ignoring the intense pain in my body, and screamed my heart out. Then why did you marry me? You're the only daughter of the Smith family. Marrying you was beneficial, but now you're worthless to me. Mary is coming back, and you have to go. I mustered every bit of strength to spit out the words. He let out a scoff, looking at me like some useless object. When he mentioned Mary, there was a hint of softness in his eyes. We've been married for 2 years. Lance always listened to everything I said, and our life was sweet and tender. But looking back now, it all feels like a joke. Lance gave me one last look before walking away. I lay on the ground in despair, blood gushing out, my breath barely noticeable, wrapped in the fear of death. If I could do it all over again, I'd never let Lance get away with this. Hatred surged within me, and my body couldn't hold on any longer. I went limp, and my consciousness faded. Rachel, wake up, the banquet is about to start. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a familiar room, with Mom gently calling my name. Have I been reborn? Tears welled up, and I hugged her tightly, fearing it was just a dream. I told Mom I had a nightmare, and would get ready for the banquet. Looking at myself in the mirror, I smiled. Lance, let's play this game together. Everyone at the event was dressed to the nines, chatting and swapping drinks. Music flowed like a gentle stream through the crowd, setting the atmosphere. Look, it's Rachel, someone in the crowd shouted, and everyone turned to look. I walked down the stairs slowly, holding the hem of my dress, the red gown perfectly outlining my figure, my slight smirk brimming with charm. I scanned the hall and, sure enough, saw Lance. He had that determined look in his eyes. This is a year before our wedding. This party was my parents' way of finding me a suitable match. After it, Lance kept meeting me by chance. So he'd been planning this from way back, huh? I smirked, thinking of how I could turn the tables. Dad saw me and dismissed the people around him, walking over. Rachel, the city's finest young men and women are here. Are you satisfied? He smiled at me as he glanced around. My eyes landed on Lance, and Dad, thinking I was interested, began speaking. The eldest of the Williams, Lance, his ambitious and quite a promising young man. I let out a laugh. At this point, he was just some nobody who was more known for getting snubbed in social circles. I smiled as I looked at Lance from afar and met his gaze, raising my voice just enough for everyone to hear. Him, I think Thomas Jr. is better. Thomas Jr. had a knack for business, but lost his legs in an accident, which led him to become a recluse. The crowd laughed at my description of Lance. That's quite the description. Lance hasn't made much of himself. Thomas is way ahead. It was Jane who spoke up, my best friend, known for her straightforward nature. She never liked Lance, and in my last life, advised me to stay away from him. But with his relentless pursuit, I got lost and ended up on a path of no return. In this life, instead of mingling with those young men, I stayed with Dad, talking with important figures, and bringing more business partners to the Smith family. After a long time of socializing, I felt tired and moved to the balcony to enjoy some quiet. Rachel, hi, I'm Lance. I frowned, feeling a wave of displeasure, not wanting to see him at all. Sorry, I don't recall you, and I have nothing to say. I looked at him with arrogance. He was taken aback by my cold attitude, clearly not expecting me to be so dismissive. Rachel, I just want to be friends. Lance adjusted his expression and smiled gently at me, eyes filled with softness. I scoffed internally, thinking he should have gone into showbiz with skills like that. Don't waste your time on my Rachel. She doesn't like your type. Jane suddenly appeared, pulling me to her side, and looked at Lance with annoyance. Lance, can't you see Rachel is tired? Please see Lance out and don't disturb us. Lance barely spoke when Jane cut him off with a hint of anger, and he left, looking defeated. Jane poked my head playfully, giving me a gentle pinch. You better not make the wrong choice. Lance was cozy with that Mary not long ago, and now he's after you. What a toad trying to get a swan. Mary. I searched my mind, but found nothing about Mary. Miss Taylor, a college mate of Lance, his first love. Her family's business has been declining, so it's normal you don't know. Mary too, it's that Mary Lance kept mentioning. He plotted against me just because of her. I really want to see what kind of person she is. I looked intrigued, sharing a smile with Jane. A plan was forming in my mind. After the party, my dad called me to his study. I opened the door, smiling sweetly at him. Tonight, you didn't chat with those young folks. You stuck with me talking business. What's going on in your head this time? Seeing the doting look in my dad's eyes, I straightened up and shared my thoughts. Dad, I thought about it. Marriage alliances might not always benefit the company. I want to join the group and help you manage the company. Dad looked at the seriousness in my eyes. Once he was sure I wasn't joking, he smiled warmly and patted my head. Good girl, if you have such ambitions, of course, I will support you. With my dad's approval, I felt at ease. I would protect the legacy they worked so hard to build, making sure no one would try to take what's rightfully mine. Back in my room, I revisited some finance books from college. Starlight Group is one of the largest real estate groups in the country. It's the result of generations of hard work that stabilized the Smith family in City A. My parents groomed me to be the heir from a young age. In my last life, I wasn't interested in company matters, but now, as Starlight reaches its peak, I have to seize the opportunity. Flipping through page after page of documents, years of business immersion gave me a clearer understanding of the industry. The crescent moon hung silently on the tree branches. The evening breeze brushed by, rustling the leaves. I stretched, put my work to rest, and slowly climbed into bed, embracing dreams. A few days later, Dad took me to the company. Stepping out of the car, I gazed at the tall buildings, feeling a pang of emotion. In my past life, Lance used me to empty out Starlight. Now, I will use the power he craves to corner him step by step. Rachel, the entire Starlight is yours. Don't be nervous, your mom and I are always behind you. Dad thought I was anxious, patting my shoulder, calming my restlessness as always. I looked at my graying father, nodded firmly, and walked into the company with him. Starting today, my daughter Rachel will join Starlight Group as the new CEO. I stood next to Dad, listening to him introduce me sternly, and smiled at everyone. Hello, everyone. Looking forward to working with you all. Seated were familiar faces from the party. Warmth filled me realizing Dad had laid the groundwork for me all along. After the meeting, Dad led me to an office. It was cozy, adorned with beautiful paintings, the mahogany bookshelf by the desk filled with elegantly bound books. It was my favorite style. You'll work here. I've arranged a secretary to assist you. Dad's face was full of a kind smile. Looking at the man beside him, something clicked. My mind flashed back to the person standing by Lance's side when I got hit by a car in my last life. It was him, the driver who hit me. Lance had meticulously laid out his plans. Regardless of my attitude at the party, he was set on taking over Starlight. A flash of shock crossed my mind, though I didn't show it. Lance might not have great skills, but he sure had an appetite. What's your name? Tony. I recently joined. I smiled at Tony, who respectfully lowered his head. Tony, you've got your fate too. I dismissed Tony and sat down with Dad, chatting as I flipped through documents. He's just a fresh graduate. How did you think of hiring him? You always need to give young people chances. When Dad was young, someone helped him achieve success. So, after his success, he liked helping aspiring youths. But goodwill can sometimes backfire. Watching Dad, I flashed a knowing smile. A fresh graduate with no background, daring enough to apply for a CEO's secretary. He's ambitious. Dad seemed to be awakened by my words. Frowning as he pondered this, he slowly spoke up. If a suitable person shows up, replace him. Let him slip up first. I chuckled. I'm not letting him off so easily. I'll patiently repay those who wronged me before. Lance, like in my past life, started accidentally bumping into me after the party. Initially, I didn't care about him, but Tony's presence inspired a plan. Tony, I'm a bit tired today. Can you review these files? I'm heading out. I handed the files to him, adding a hint of playful charm to my words. Tony took the files, a flash of excitement passed his eyes. In another second, disappointment followed. They were just ordinary files. As I went downstairs, sure enough, Lance was in the distance. Tony worked quickly. Rachel, what a coincidence. Want to take a walk? Mr. Lance, since you invited, how could I say no? Lance was taken aback, not expecting my agreement. I looked at him, eyes full of an apologetic expression. Mr. Lance, I'm sorry for being rude at the party. I just don't want to be a tool for family alliances. I understand you, Rachel. Maybe it's bold to say, but my feelings for you are real. Yes, very bold. Last time, I got fooled by these sweet words. I sneered internally, outwardly appearing bashful. Call me Rachel from now on. Okay, Rachel, can we meet more often? The gentle breeze lifted my hair. I tucked the stray strands behind my ear, looked at Lance, then lowered my head, murmuring a response. Lance smiled, probably thinking he had wrapped me around his finger. Talk about overconfident. 3 After saying goodbye to Lance, I turned and headed to a discreet cafe on the street corner, and sat across from a girl. Rachel, I heard you were looking for me. I glanced at the girl, with her big captivating eyes and flawless skin. She really was a vision. No wonder Lance couldn't forget about her in a past life. I gave her a friendly smile and jumped right in. Instead of watching Lance play around, how about teaming up with me? Why me? You're Mary, a finance prodigy from a prestigious school. It'd be a shame to just be arm candy for some guy. Mary seemed touched. I guessed she just needed a little push. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Sunny Mall. I'll teach you a lesson. After that, I waved goodbye, knowing soon Mary will be by my side. I couldn't wait to see Lance's reaction. At home, I called Lance. Lance, I was thinking of going to the Sunny Mall tomorrow. Care to join me? Rachel, of course, I'd love to. We chatted for a while, with me playing the smitten girl, secretly looking forward to tomorrow. Lance, tomorrow you'll have to choose. The high and mighty Rachel, or the sweet little flower. The city streets were lit up, the sunlight hitting the ground and lighting up the faces of people rushing by or strolling leisurely. Lance and I wandered through the Sunny Mall, laughing and chatting. I spotted a familiar figure not far away, and smiled. Lance, let's check that out. I pointed to a nearby luxury brand store. Lance nodded warmly. Looking at the dazzling jewelry in the display cases, I thought up a little scheme. My eyes landed on a necklace, and I knew what to do. Lance, look at this necklace. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah, it would look great on you. I playfully tugged on Lance's arm, looking up at him with excited eyes. He chuckled, and a sales assistant approached us eagerly. Miss, you've got great taste. This necklace is made with several sapphires, and its design enhances your elegance. I gazed at the sapphire necklace, then back at Lance with a delighted look. No man could resist showing off in front of a woman. He bought the necklace, looking at me with indulgence. Let me put it on you. Lance got closer, his warm breath on my neck making me blush as I turned my face away. Rachel, you look beautiful. Lance stepped back after fastening it, smiling at me with a gentlemanly charm. Just the kind of person who ruined my life. Arm in arm, we left the store, but Mary emerged from the corner, looking pitifully at Lance. Lance, who is she? Hearing the slight sob in Mary's voice, I laughed inwardly but feigned innocence outwardly. Lance, who is this? Lance clearly didn't expect to see Mary here, especially with my arm around him. He paused, then quickly put on a distant expression. This is Mary, a classmate from college. Quite a coincidence running into her here. Oh, I see. Hi Mary, I'm Rachel, a friend of Lance. Men are like this. Given the choice between a privileged beauty and a first love, they'll go for the one beneficial to them. Classmate, that's what you're saying. Hearing this, the sadness in Mary's eyes turned to ice, and she turned to leave. See, I've succeeded, Mary. The moonlight spilled everywhere. The city was aglow outside the window. In my office, I was handling paperwork left over from the day, looking at a project involving Lance's family. Grinning, I finished it and prepared an identical copy to leave on my desk. Tony, you handle the papers on my desk. I'm heading out. I called Tony in to take over some work, pretending to be impatient as I left the office. Lately, I've had Tony handle minor documents, all subtly altered to benefit Lance, but only slightly. Though exhausted, I built a reputation with him as a frivolous heir. The intel Tony got from me boosted Lance's company, making Tony trust my documents more. Tony, soon I'll be giving you a big surprise. It was dark when I left the company, but I had a meeting with Mary at the same cafe as before. Same place, same people, but Mary didn't seem frail like last time. Her eyes were now filled with resolve. I knew then, she was on my side. Rachel, I've thought it over, you're right. Leaning on a man is useless. They are fickle creatures. Glad you realized that. Lance took what was most precious to me. He doesn't deserve love. I lifted my chin, meeting Mary's gaze with a dazzling smile. You've chosen me, and I'll help you reclaim what you lost. Though Mary seemed puzzled, when I mentioned retrieving something important, understanding dawned on her. She connected it to her company's sudden decline. She stood abruptly, grabbing my hand. Really, can you find out who's behind this? Ever since her family's business started sinking, she'd sensed something was wrong. While others pitied them, she knew no one in the Taylors had crossed anyone. I gently squeezed her hand, offering reassurance. I don't make empty promises, just support me, and the truth will reveal itself soon. And just like that, Mary and I were on the same page. For when I got home, I searched through records from back then. Nothing seemed off. But when Lance and Mary started interacting, the Shu family started to decline. Most people wouldn't think twice about this, but in my past life, Lance married me and slowly drained Starlight, which made me realize he might be a serial culprit. I despised Lance even more. He was like a parasite, siphoning off others to benefit himself. Disgusting. The morning sun was warm and soft, spreading hope across the city. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the endless stream of cars below. I acquired a few promising companies, and with our investment, they are already showing their strengths. Good job, Mary. Listening to the news through the phone, I smiled slightly, feeling happy. My relationship with Mary improved as we worked together. She showed me her talents too. Mary now acts as my secret advisor. I'm glad Lance only saw her innocent appearance and overlooked her business genius. Lance's company has been climbing fast, almost as if it could surpass Rachel. He's gotten pretty smug about it. He sometimes asks me out, and I'd complain about work pressures. He'd tell me not to overwork myself and let my secretary handle things, which I praised as thoughtful. Rachel, there's a new industry emerging, and a lot of business giants are investing. Should we? We shouldn't. That project's unstable. The emerging industry Mary mentioned is too familiar to me. In my last life, many industry leaders invested, and Lance wanted to as well. I stopped him, and he gave up. Later, when the project failed, it caused huge losses for all the investors. Lance ended up benefiting from their downfall. Since Mary started working with me, she listened without question. After I declined her proposal, I hung up. Acting as Lance's sweetheart, I naturally had to encourage him to seize the opportunity. I invited Lance out for a walk. We chatted lightly, occasionally bumping into each other, and I'd shyly smile and lower my head. When we got tired, we sat side by side on a bench, with a lovely breeze around us. My dad mentioned how many big shots are investing in a project lately. What do you think, Lance? I heard too, planning to invest. Didn't know you were aware, Rachel. Just heard my dad wanted to invest more. He's got a good eye. Hearing Lance praise me, I glanced up at his gentle eyes and reluctantly held back my mocking expression, with a hand flipped to hide my face. This should make him invest more, right? Please don't let me down, Lance. With more investors flocking to the emerging industry, everyone hoped for endless wealth. Just as expected, I stirred things up, and Lance invested almost half of his assets in the project. Sure enough, when everyone idolized the project, unexpected things happened. The most anticipated project went bust, causing massive losses for all investors and involved parties. Many firms hoped to strike it rich, but ended up losing everything they invested. Lance was devastated. Most of his carefully accumulated assets drained into this fiasco. Mary and I sat in a cafe, chatting leisurely, seemingly untouched by the chaos outside. Lance is down for good this time, Rachel. What did he do to cross you? That's my secret. Just watch me handle him. Mary had been by my side long enough to know I had secrets, ones I didn't share. When I first met you, I thought you liked Lance and sought me out. Didn't expect you'd pull me out of the muck. She looked at me with her pure, endearing look, as if I saved her. Her words embarrassed me a bit. So I looked down at my coffee. Lance is good at acting, so I have to be better. What's your next move? No need to do anything. He'll come to me. I grinned at Mary, and we both shared a knowing smile. Smart folks never waste words. Back home, I geared up emotionally and called Lance, sniffing as I spoke. Lance, are you okay? Sorry, I shouldn't have suggested that investment. It's fine, Rachel. I should have been more cautious. He sounded down over the phone. This hit must have been tough for him. I'm really worried about you. You can't fall apart on me, Lance. If you crash now, how will you see everything you own taken bit by bit? Don't lose hope, Lance. I'll always be here for you. Yeah, there's still hope. Thank you, Rachel. Hanging up, I stared at the dark night sky out the window, grinning with excitement. Someone's about to get kicked out. A few days later, I nabbed a big deal. Elated, I shared the news with Lance, then casually tossed the documents aside, skipping out on work for Tony to handle. I set up a meeting with Lance outside the office. After less than half an hour into our outing, I received a text from Mary. Success. Smiling, I gave Lance an apologetic look. Sorry, Lance. My dad found out I left. I gotta go back. Catch you next time. Lance nodded and watched me leave. I quickly walked back to the office. Tony had already finished his work. I told him not to bother me and went into the office alone. As soon as I stepped in, I reached behind to press the alarm. When the call connected, I couldn't help but smile excitedly. Hello. I'd like to report an employee of my company for suspected corporate espionage. It's serious and has caused enormous losses. I called Tony into the office, smiling at him with a hint of suspicion in my voice. Tony, my friend came to see me today. Did you see her? Sorry, Rachel. I didn't see your friend. That's my mistake. I scoffed, leaning back lazily in my chair, staring at Tony with mockery written all over my face. Yeah, it sure was your mistake. You're pathetic, Tony. Tony looked confused by my words, but the next moment, the police burst in, and Tony froze in shock. Tony, multiple reports accuse you of corporate espionage. Come with us. One officer handcuffed Tony. They promised me they'd get back to me soon, and then took him away. Mary stepped out from the corner and stood beside me, watching Tony's figure vanish, then turned to look at me. Can't believe he had the guts to steal files from the office and then tip off Lance. They won't get away this time, right? Yeah, Lance is next. He's not someone who can handle a close inspection. I smiled in satisfaction. All the planning was finally paying off. Good thing you were here, or he would have gotten away with it. It was nothing, especially since you helped me out from the start. I looked at her gratefully, thinking of how busy she's been helping me. Mary acted like it wasn't a big deal, but without her, many things would have been a lot tougher. Everything was about to wrap up. Neither Tom nor Lance could escape the punishment that was due. Tom's trial concluded, with various evidence confirming his crime of leaking corporate secrets. There was no chance for him to recover. Under police pressure and investigation, they found Tom was really just working for Lance. Lance was next. Before that, I visited Tom to see how he was holding up in jail. His eyes were full of confusion and helplessness. When did you figure it out? The moment you showed up. I knew you couldn't stay. No way. I didn't slip up. Tom didn't believe me. He stared intensely like he was trying to find a flaw. No recent grad dares to apply for the executive assistant role at Rachel Corp, no matter how impressive their resume. I laughed. My gaze toward him was filled with disdain, like looking at a useless piece of trash. My dad may be soft-hearted, but I'm not. Anyone who tries to take what's mine pays the price. With that, I stood up, giving Tom one last look. Despair filled his eyes. I smirked at him and walked away. Tom was just the beginning. Lance was next. Mary helped me uncover many of Lance's wrongdoings over the years. She even found that her family's downfall was linked to Lance. Turns out he pursued me back then just to climb using the Mary name. That's why we need to make him pay. She didn't realize how calculated Lance was, and her words dripped with hatred. I patted her hand to comfort her, already plotting how to deal with Lance. After the police finished investigating Tom, they were ready to move on to Lance. Mary and I handed over all the evidence we'd gathered against Lance to the police, piling more charges on him. Right then, Lance disappeared. Since he hadn't heard from Tom for days, he sensed something was off and fled overnight. but his actions showed me how confident he was. On the third day of his escape, he called Mary, professing his love and saying everything before was just planning for their future. Mary feigned emotion, shakily telling Lance she'd never forgotten him. Thinking Mary still loved him, Lance asked her to bring cash and meet him in the woods on the outskirts, promising to marry her once things cooled down. Unbeknownst to Lance, as he made the call, Mary and I sat together, leisurely sipping afternoon tea. I marveled at his nerve, trying to use Mary again after ditching her. We shared a knowing smile. His confident, all right, thinking I'm still the naive Mary the first once was. Men always overestimate themselves. That's fine, he'll soon find out the consequences. We walked side by side as a gentle breeze brushed against us, bringing a moment of peace. Everything would soon come to an end. Moonlight peered through the clouds, sketching the forest's outline. A girl's silhouette appeared alone, carrying a heavy-looking canvas bag. Lance, are you here? It's so dark, I'm scared. Mary wore a thin dress, calling out softly to Lance, voice trembling in fear, looking pitiful. A figure suddenly emerged from afar, stopping not far from Mary. Mary, don't be scared. I'm here. Look, I brought lots of money for you. Aren't I good to you? Mary walked toward Lance. He was a bit wary at first, but calmed down upon seeing her open the bag full of cash, looking touched as he took her hand. Mary, you're so good to me. I love you the most. 6 love me, then why'd you have to wreck my home? Mary suddenly burst into laughter, kicking Lance to the ground. I stepped out from the corner, planting my foot on Lance, with a few tall bodyguards standing behind me. Lance, I told you we'd meet again. How does betrayal feel? I ground my heel into him, watching as he grimaced in pain and shot us a furious glare. Helping Rachel won't end well for you. Don't you know what she's capable of? Whack! I crouched down and slapped Lance across the face, glaring at him disdainfully. So noble, building your empire off women's backs and swallowing their assets. Lance, can you guess what I'm gonna do next? I smiled brightly, a sly glint in my eye. The bodyguards closed in. All around us was deserted wilderness. Lance turned pale and began trembling slightly. You can't do this to me, it's illegal. Why would I? I'm a law-abiding citizen. His expression eased a bit at my words. I nodded at Mary without saying more. She crouched next to Lance, first patting his face, then suddenly gripping his throat, her eyes full of intent. What you shouldn't have done was covet what's not yours. Lance's breathing became labored, his mouth open and closing silently, eyes full of desperation. We're not gonna kill you. I patted Mary's shoulder, and she let go. Lance gulped down air greedily, looking pitiful. I felt disgusted, and didn't want to waste more words. I called the cops. Cops, I got Lance. Any reward for that? The answer I got was just what I wanted. I watched Lance's dramatic expressions as the guards dragged him to the police station. Lance, I said I wouldn't kill you, but I never said I'd let you walk free. The A City Public Security Bureau issued a statement, thanking Mary and me for assisting the police in capturing Lance. We got a reward of 100,000 yuan and a banner for being good citizens. I hung the banner in a prominent spot in the office, making Mary chuckle at my smugness. Lance and Tony were already behind bars. As I bought Lance's company, Mary and I came out as the ultimate winners. The company I had you acquire is doing pretty well, so you handle it. What about you? Rachel's family is huge. I can't be half-hearted. Hearing my reply, Mary relaxed, looking at me with serious eyes on her pretty face. All right, Rachel, whatever you do, I support you. Me too. I ruffled Mary's hair with a smile. She's such an innocent yet adorable girl, deadly serious in business, a rare gem. The sun set low, its warm rays streaming through the clouds. The three of us sat together in the villa, a heartwarming scene too precious to disrupt. Between them, I snuggled up. Dad doted on me, gently patting my head. Rachel, when you first joined the company, I worried you wouldn't fit in, but you kept proving your abilities. Dad's words carried warmth. I looked up at him, smiling brightly. A daughter of Bob is bound to be excellent, no matter the past lives or present. All I wish for is to be by my parents' side, their sweet and lovely daughter, Rachel. Morning came, with a gentle breeze blowing through, sunlight sparkling off the ocean waves. Mary and I strolled along the beach, soaking in the good times. Together, we became well-known entrepreneurs over the years, and when people think of a city, they think of Rachel and Mary. Mary, Wouldn't it be wonderful to live by the sea, always watching the tides? How romantic. Your folks would be dragging you back home.